Let me introduce myself. My name is Sabjar Ali. I'm working for one of the MNC companies. I have around 10 years of experience in ETL Informatica Power Center. Parallelly, I'm giving online as well as classroom trainings from past 5 years. This is all about brief about myself. And let's start with training agenda. So in this Informatica Power Center training, so first we'll be starting with SQL and then PLSQL basics, data warehouse concepts, then Informatica Power Center, unit testing, deployment activities, Unix shell scripting, and finally projects. So this is the training agenda. So if you want to learn Informatica tool, so then you should have knowledge in all these areas. So whatever the knowledge is required to work in Informatica Power Center, we are going to discuss each and everything. But most of the students will have SQL knowledge, the basic SQL knowledge. So that's the reason. So here the live session would be from data warehouse, not from SQL. So I have 8 hours of the recorded session and PLSQL just 2 hours of recorded session. So I'll be sharing the 10 hours of recorded session to brush up the SQL knowledge. In SQL, I have explained five types of languages like DDL, DML, what are the different commands are there. In the same way DRL, okay, TCL, DCL, like that we have five types of languages in SQL. So in each and every type of language we have different set of commands. I've explained those commands, how to use those commands and where to use with examples. Okay, and also in SQL I have explained about functions, operators, views, materialized views, joins, then finally some important queries which we regularly will be using, and also query tuning. Okay, these are the concepts I covered in SQL. And then coming to PL SQL, in PL SQL there are many things, okay, but for Informatica developer we should have basic knowledge of stored procedure. So we should be able to write the PL script, and also we should be able to execute the PL script, and we should have the knowledge about the stored procedure, what is stored procedure, how to create a stored procedure, how to execute the stored procedure in real time, what is the scenario where we create a stored procedure as Informatica developer. These things I have explained, and practically I have created one PLS SQL script and executed, and also created the stored procedure in a database and executed the stored procedure. These things I have explained in PLSQL basic session. Okay, so like this, 10 hours of SQL and PLSQL both will be sharing the recorded session to brush up the SQL knowledge. But the live session would be from data warehouse. So data warehouse, it is just 1 hour session. Okay, and then most of the time we'll be spending in Informatica Power Center. Okay, so in this demo session, what I will do is I'll explain about what is data warehouse, what type of data we store in data warehouse, what we can do by using the data warehouse data, and then we'll also discuss about what is Informatica Power Center tool, where this Informatica Power Center tool exactly used in data warehouse projects, and what are the concepts we are going to cover as part of this Informatica training. All those things we'll discuss. But first, we'll start with understanding the data warehouse. For example, let's say there is an ATM machine. So this is an ATM machine, and also there is one database. Let's say this is a database. Okay, so this ATM machine is connected to the database. So if it is connected, that means, so whatever the transactions we do through ATM machine, all the transaction data is going to be inserted into the database, right? Okay, so let's say an user, he has made the first transaction. Whatever transaction he has made, transaction means withdrawing or depositing the money through ATM machine. So whatever the transaction he has made, the first transaction data inserted into the database. After 1 hour, he has made the second transaction. let's say the same second transaction also inserted into the database like this. And after 1 hour he has made the third transaction, the same third transaction also inserted into the database like this. An user he has made total around 1000 transactions in a day. Okay, so if the user has made 1000 transactions, database also should have all the 1000 transaction data, right? So whatever the we know, whatever the transactions we do through ATM machine, all the transaction data is going to be inserted into the database. Okay, so end of the day he has selected mini statement option in ATM machine. So let's say that we know that there is a mini statement option. As soon as we select that option, it will connect to the database, and from that whatever the transactions we have, so it will select some some transaction data, right? So any idea how many transaction data will be there in the mini statement? We know, right? Only last few transactions. Okay, last few means last 5 transactions or last 10 transactions only, not all the transactions. Okay, assume last 10 transactions, so it contains only last 10 transactions. Okay, why it contains only limited number of transactions or latest transactions? Why not old transactions, or why not more number of transactions? Means whichever the database here we have connected from ATM machine, this database itself is designed to maintain limited number of transactions, not all the transactions. Okay, limited means, let's say if this database is designed to maintain last 10 transactions, as soon as user made the first transaction, first record will be inserted here, second transactions, same transaction record will be inserted here, like this. As soon as user made the 11th transaction, before inserting the 11th record, so it will delete the first record and then it will insert the 11th record. Why? Because if the database is designed to maintain only last 10 transactions, as soon as user made the 11th transaction, before inserting the 11th record, before inserting the 11th record, first it will delete the first record and then it will insert the 11th record. As soon as user made the 12th transaction, before inserting the 12th record, it will delete the second transaction and then it will insert the 12th record. As soon as user made the 13th transaction, before inserting the 13th record, it will delete the third record and then it will insert the 13th record. Like that, if the database is designed, even though user has made 1000 transactions in a day, so we'll have only last, 10 transactions. Okay, so why the database is designed like this? Why can't we maintain all the transaction data here? Okay, so why the database is designed to maintain last 10 transactions or last few transactions? Means, suppose let's say the same user, he has made 1 million transactions. Okay, from last 1 year, let's say he has made 1 million transactions. If he has made 1 million transactions, database also should have all the 1 million transaction data. Okay, so assume we have stored all the 1 million transaction data. So user has made 1 million transactions from last 1 year, and we have stored all the 1 million transaction data in the database. Okay, so today he has selected balance inquiry option. We know there is a balance inquiry option also in ATM machine, right? As soon as we select the balance inquiry option, it will connect to the database. On top of the database, some select query will execute, right? So as soon as we select the balance inquiry option, it will connect to the database. On top of the database, some select query will execute. Okay, so for that user, we have 1 million transaction data, right? Since we have 1 million transaction data, assume the query is going to execute on top of 1 million records. So for one user, there are 1 million transaction records. Assume the query is going to execute on top of 1 million transaction records. Okay, so if the query is going to execute on top of 1 million transaction records, how much time is going to take to execute? Will it take time or not? Definitely it will take time. So if there are huge number of transaction records, query will take time. So assume it took 5 minutes of time. So user selected balance inquiry option. After 5 minutes, it has displayed the result. Okay, why it has displayed the result after 5 minutes? Because of huge transaction data. Since we have the huge transaction data here, that's why query took a long time. So if you store all the transaction data or huge transaction data, then definitely queries will take time to execute, and so it will affect it to the customer. Okay, so that is the reason we do not maintain all the transaction data in this database. Okay, so we maintain only limited data or latest data or current data. Fine, next. So now we are sure that this database contains only limited data or latest data. So we do not maintain all the transaction data. So we have seen if you maintain all the transaction data, then queries will take time to execute and it will affect it to the customer. That's we are clear. Next, let's say user requested for last 1 month bank statement or last 1 year statement. Okay, so do we have last 1 year data here to generate the statement? No, here we have only latest data or current data. Then from where we'll get the last 1 year data? Means parallelly to this database we'll have one more database. Okay, so as soon as user made the first transaction, first record will be inserted into the first database. The same first record we are also going to insert into the second database. In the same way, as soon as user made the second transaction record, first it will be inserted into the first database. The same second record also going to be inserted into the second database. Like this, third transaction, fourth transaction, fifth transaction. As soon as user made the 11th transaction, before inserting the 11th record in the first database, we delete the first record and then we'll insert the 11th record, right? Okay, whereas here we are not going to delete anything, we will be keep on inserting like this. If the user has made 1 million transactions, we are sure first database contains only last 10 transactions or limited number of transactions, whereas the second database contains all the 1 million transactions from day 1 to till date will have all the transaction data. Now here whatever the data we have in the second database from day 1 to till date, right, from first transaction to the last transaction, whatever data we have in the second database, can we call this as a historical data? Yes, right. We can call this as a historical data. So historical data means from day 1 to till date, if you store all the transaction data, such data we called it as a historical data. Okay. So whichever the database is having the historical data like this from day 1 to till date, always if we keep on inserting the data, then such database we call it as data warehouse database. Okay, so data warehouse contains what type of data? Historical data. Historical data means from day 1 to till date all the transaction data without deleting. If we keep on inserting the records, then we'll have the history, right? So such database we called it as a data warehouse database. Can we call first database as a data warehouse database? No, right? So here we don't have the historical data. Okay, so here we have the latest data or current data. Okay, so whatever the data, when like whatever whichever the database is having the latest data or current data, such database we call it as OLTP database. So OLTP contains the latest data or current data or limited data, right? Whereas data warehouse contains historical data. Clear? Any questions? Okay, so OLTP database contains latest data or current data, whereas data warehouse contains the historical data. Next. Now, what is the use of storing the historical data in data warehouse? What we can do by using the historical data? Okay, any idea? What we can do by using the historical data? Right. Okay, so yes. So we'll see what is the use of storing the historical data in data warehouse, what we can do by using the historical data. Okay. Let's say we have one more ATM machine belongs to same bank in different location and another ATM machine belongs to same bank in different location. Let's say this is in USA location and this is in India location and this is in UK location. Like this we have three ATM machines belongs to same bank in three different locations. Okay, all these three first they have connected to OLTP database like this. All the three ATM machines transaction data first it is going to be loaded into OLTP database and then from OLTP to data warehouse. All the three ATM machines transaction data from OLTP we are going to load into the data warehouse. So which means in data warehouse we have historical data of all these three ATM machines, right? Okay, so if all three connected to OLTP and from OLTP to data warehouse means all the three ATM machines transaction data loaded into the data warehouse. Okay, so let's say we have the history like this. For example, in the year of 2001, from USA location machine, we have total 120 transactions. Whole year, how many transactions are there? 120. Same from India location, we have around 100 transactions. From UK location, we have around 40 transactions. Like this, we have whole year transaction data belongs to these three ATM machines we have in data warehouse database. Okay, in the same way, let's say we have one more year transaction data. From this location we have 100 transactions. From this location around 150 transactions. From this location we have 30 transactions. In the same way, we have one more year transaction data. Let's say here we have 110 transactions. From this location 120. From this location 40. Like this, we have 3 years of transaction data belongs to these three ATM machines we have in data warehouse database. Okay, since all these three ATM machines are belongs to same bank, let's say every business will have their own cutoff transactions. Okay, in the same way here, let's say if the transactions are greater than 50, then that's center running in profits. Assume if the transactions are less than 50, then that's center running in loss. Like this, let's say they have some cutoff transactions. Now by seeing this data, you tell me in the next year which machine we should have to keep and which machine we should have to remove to keep the business in profits. By seeing this data, you tell me in the next year which machine we should have to keep and which machine we should have to remove to keep the business in profits. Yes, so we can keep US and India, and but UK, if you see all the transactions we have less than 50, that means this is running in loss, right? Now what we did here, so we have some data. By seeing this data, we have done some analysis. Based on our analysis, we have taken the decision on the business to keep the business in profits, right? Okay, so whatever the data here we have, can we call this as the report? Yes, we can call this as a report, right? So from where we have generated this report? From the data warehouse. So from data warehouse, we have generated the report. What is the use of this report? Reports are helpful to the business users to do analysis on the business and to keep the business in profits, right? If you don't have such type of report, how would we know which center is running in profits and which center running in loss? We don't know, right? Okay, so by using the data warehouse data, we know that data warehouse contains the historical data. By using the historical data, we can generate the reports. Reports are helpful to the business users to do analysis on the business and to take the decision on the business, right? Okay, so this is the overview of data warehouse. With this, we know what is data warehouse, what type of data we store in data warehouse, what we can do by using the data warehouse data, and also what is OLTP database, what type of data OLTP database contains, right? And also, can we generate this type of report based on OLTP data? Can we generate the reports based on OLTP data? No, right? Because OLTP database contains the latest data or current data. Just by seeing 1 day or 2 days data, we cannot take the decision or we cannot do the analysis on the business. We need to have historical data or years of data to do analysis on the business. Okay, right? So that's the reason we need to have the data warehouse where we can generate the reports. Fine. Next, coming to Informatica. Okay, so Informatica is a company name. So there is a company with the name Informatica. That company developed many tools. One of the tools name is ETL Informatica Power Center. One of the tools name is ETL Informatica Power Center. What is meant by ETL? Any idea what is meant by ETL? ETL means extract, transform, and load, right? ETL means extract, transform, and load. What it means? Extracting the data from one database, transform and load into another database is called ETL, right? Okay, so we know that whatever the transactions made by the user from different location or from different applications, first it is going to be inserted into OLTP database. Okay, the same transaction data we also have to insert into the data warehouse, right, to maintain the historical data. Okay, it's whose responsibility to extract the data from OLTP database, transform and load into the data warehouse, means ETL Informatica Power Center. So here we use Informatica Power Center tool in data warehouse projects to extract the data from one database, transform and load into the another database. Not only OLTP to data warehouse, Okay, so we can use this tool to extract the data from any type of source database, transform and load into any type of target database. Not only databases, we can also use this tool to extract the data from any type of source flat files. Okay, different types of files we have, right? Fixed width file, delimiter file. Okay, so XML files, right? So there are different types of delimiter files also, right? So this tool we can use to extract the data from any type of source database or any type of source flat file, transform and load into in the same way any type of target database, and also any type of target flat files we can generate. Okay, but finally most of the times we load the data into the data warehouse. So between OLTP and data warehouse, again we'll have the multiple databases, right? For example, let's say ODS, operational data source, staging database, right? Those databases will be there. We'll discuss in detail once we start the data warehouse session in detail. But for now, Informatica tool is used to extract the data from one database, transform and load into another database. Okay, fine. While loading the data from one database to another database, we'll have different scenarios. So many scenarios are there. For example, let's say in ODS, we have the table like this. Source table, employee number, employee name, salary, something like this we have. Okay, like this there are total 6 rows here in source table, and in data warehouse here we have the target table. So let's say we have created Informatica mapping to extract these 6 records from source table, transform and load into the data warehouse. Okay, so our mapping, let's say it has selected all the 6 records and it has loaded all the 6 records into the data warehouse. And if you observe, in these 6 records there are 2 records. The last 2 records are duplicate records, right? Okay, and our tool has selected all the records and it has loaded all the 6 records into the data warehouse. Okay, so that means in data warehouse we have loaded the duplicate data or incorrect data or invalid data. So we have loaded into the data warehouse. So if we have loaded the incorrect data like this in the data warehouse, based on the data what we have in the data warehouse, reporting team they will generate the reports, right? Okay, so if you have the incorrect data or invalid data, how the reports are going to be generated? Is it going to be valid reports or invalid reports? Definitely it is going to be invalid reports, right? Okay, so that is the reason if you know that there are duplicate records in the source database, we have to select the distinct records or valid records, and we have to load only those valid records into the data warehouse. Then only we'll also have the valid data in the reports, right? So to select the distinct records in Informatica tool, there is a option checkbox is there, selected distinct. Okay, as soon as we enable that checkbox, so automatically tool will select the distinct record from the source database and it will load the distinct records into the target, right? So sometimes we want to select the specific records. Suppose let's say business says I want to select only salary greater than 100 record, right? Or salary greater than 200 records. Then in that case we have to write the SQL query, select star from the source table where salary greater than 200, right? Depends on business requirement. To select the specific records we have to write the query in Informatica. So there is an option or there is a property in Informatica tool, so where we can write the SQL query. So if there is a SQL query, that tool will execute the query first, and whatever the records written by that query, it will process only those records into the target. If there is no query, it will select all the records. So like that, if you want to select the specific records, we need to write the queries in Informatica. That is the reason we should have some basic knowledge of SQL to write the SQL queries and all. Okay, so like that, we have different scenarios while loading the data from source to target. So to start with the scenarios, first we have to understand the transformations. In Informatica we have transformations. Okay, so first we'll be starting with understanding the transformation functionality. Okay, so what is source qualifier, expression, filter, router? There are so many, around 30 transformations we have. Okay, so first we'll be discussing around 10 to 15 transformations. Once we are familiar with that, then parallelly we'll be starting implementing those transformations in the real-time scenarios. Real-time scenarios in the sense like we have SAD type 1, SAD type 2, incremental load or CDC or delta, okay, or dynamic flat file load, right, like that. So these are the major real-time scenarios we have. So we will be implementing those transformations parallelly in real-time scenarios. Okay, so not only loading the data from table to a table, we're also practically going to see how we can read the data from static files as well as dynamic files. In the same way, we're also going to see practically how we are going to load the data into a static files, and also how we can dynamically generate the files in the target. Okay, and in the same way, there are some scenarios where we use Unix shell script. Okay, for example, let's say there are two different workflows. Okay, after successful execution of the first workflow only, we have to execute the second workflow. So in that case, so after successful execution of the workflow, at the end of the execution, we'll be executing one Unix shell script, and that script will generate one 0 byte file, which is indicator file. Okay, so which means if the file is available means workflow 1 got succeeded. Okay, when workflow, as soon as workflow 2 started execution, before it executes the actual tasks, it should have to check whether the file is available or not. Okay, so for that also we use one Unix shell script. So there we check for the file. If the file is available, then we'll allow to run the other tasks. Okay, so if file is not available, then in Unix we have to write a code to sleep for some time that job. Okay, 300 seconds or 500 seconds. So after every 300 seconds or 500 seconds, it should have to go and check for the file whether the file is available or not. Like that, it should have to check for 5 times or 10 times. Even after checking 10 times, still the file does not exist, then it should have to send an email saying that, so even after checking 10 times, still the file does not exist, please check whether the previous workflow got succeeded or failed. Okay, so like that we have to write the Unix shell script. Okay, so here in our training there are max 5 standard scenarios where we use the Unix shell script. So those scenarios I'll explain, and also I will share the Unix shell scripts, and we'll walk through those scripts in Unix scripting class. So here in Unix scripting class we'll walk through the Unix shell scripts, what we discussed here, the scenarios. Fine. Okay, so these things we'll be discussing from Informatica Power Center. And then unit testing. Unit testing means basic standard unit test cases. As Informatica developer, we'll have max 10 test cases. We'll discuss those 10 test cases. And then deployment means moving the code from one repository to another repository. Okay, so for that there would be separate team, but still as Informatica developer we should know how to do the deployment. Okay, and then Unix scripting, as I told, whatever the scenarios which I'll be explaining, for the same scenarios we'll walk through the Unix shell script. We'll walk through the Unix scripts in the Unix scripting class. Okay, fine. So these three will be covering in 1 hour. Okay, and then the projects. So project means here I'll be explaining two different domain projects. One is telecom domain, the other one is manufacturing or sales domain project I'll be explaining. So project means first I'll explain the business of that project, what products they have, what services they provide, and then once we know the business of that project, and then we should know the data flow. So I'll be explaining, so what are the different databases are used between source in source and target databases, and also in between the databases. Actually I'll be explaining the data flow, what is the data flow from source to target, what different databases are used. Okay, so this is the we should know about the data flow. And then finally, what's your role in that project, so what type of mappings will be creating in that project, like as I told, SRE type 1, type 2, incremental load, right? So these are the mapping majorly we'll be creating. The same mapping practically here I will be explaining in Informatica Power Center. Okay, so like that in interview also you can explain the business of that project and the data flow, and third one is your role in that project. Okay, so yeah, so the same projects you can also mention in the resume. Okay, and in interview also the same thing, you can explain whatever the explanation I will be giving in the projects. Okay, so projects also, this would be around 1 hour session. right? Okay, and then Informatica Power Center, the remaining basically live session would be from data warehouse, right? So here for these 3 hours, then for Informatica Power Center we'll have 23 hours. So total training duration would be max 25 hours. 25 hour. If there are any doubts, then we'll have the doubt session 26 hours. Duration would be max 25 hours. Okay, and we'll have daily weekdays. Weekday session will have 1.5 hour, 1 hour 30 minute session we'll have every day, right? So okay, so this is the timing and the duration. Every day we'll have 1 hour 30 minute session. Fine. Next, whatever the software is required to work with Informatica, Informatica server software, client software. So before Informatica, there should be one database software. Okay. So I have already uploaded required softwares in Google Drive, like Oracle 11G software and Informatica latest version, which is 10.2. Okay. Informatica 10.2 also I have uploaded in Google Drive. I'll be sharing the link so that you can download the Informatica softwares in your system. So once you download it, I will help you to install the softwares in your system. Okay, so once the softwares are installed, so that every day I will be giving 4 5 scenarios to practice to get the hands-on experience. Okay, the same thing after the class you can practice. So during the class, I'll also be explaining the paint window and also practically I will show in my system. Okay, the same thing you can also practice after the class in your system so that you will get the hands-on experience in that Informatica tool. Okay, and also I have uploaded required soft copy materials in Google Drive, and I will be sharing the link to download the materials. You can also go through Informatica material, SQL, data warehouse, and the other Unix scripting projects and other real-time documents. So whatever are required, so I've uploaded in Google Drive. I'll be sharing the link. You can download the same. This is all about our training. Okay, any questions during or any in this demo or in Informatica? If there are any questions, you can ask. Fine. Okay, fine then. So that's all I have. So if you have anything, you can. Okay, so if you have anything, you can drop email to this ID. This is my email ID, msali29@gmail.com. Regarding this demo session or a training, if there are any questions, you can just drop email to us. Thanks. Okay. Yeah.